Hello everyone, and welcome to another gameplay analysis video. Today I'll be looking at my final game from this season's International Championship, and because my video has been so delayed, there's already been a rating update based on performance, so I'll just talk through the introduction. In first position is Sektat, rated 1766. I'm in second position in this game, rated 1815. In third position is Tordread, rated 1747. And in fourth position is Fjantarik, rated 1752. At the start of this game, all three of us at the top here, Sektat, myself, and Tordread, all have chances of promotion, but spoilers from the previous video that you saw, you know that one of us has been forced or no longer has chances for that promotion anymore. Fjantarik, however, is guaranteed relegation, but based on Fjantarik's attitude, I believe that he'll try to do as well as he can regardless of his relegation status, and will probably try to put forth his best performance. Anyways, going on to the game overview. Looking at the Age 3 wonders, we can see that there's Internet, International Red Cross, Fast Food Chains, and Hollywood. All of these have pretty good potential to be big point wonders in this game. The one that kind of stands out to me here is Internet and Red Cross seem to be pretty strong overall. Internet is supported by Pierre and Meyer, and because of the way their culture bonuses work, Internet can really get a lot of points with those leaders. Red Cross is always a big point wonder, but I think it's also especially strong with Sun Tzu in the game, and there's a relatively good colonization strategy with Columbus, Barbarossa in H1, and Cook or Maria Theresa in H2. Fast Food Chains is another wonder that gets supported by the colonization strategy, as well as having extra support with Ocean Liner. And then Hollywood is also another very consistently good wonder, has support with Chaplin and Marlena, with Bach from H2, or possibly a little bit of Gaudi as well. And then since I mentioned Sun Tzu in the game earlier, it's just something you always have to be aware of. There can be a pretty strong strength push with him, especially with leaders like Zizka and Barbarossa in the game. Other than these two leaders, though, all the rest of the Age 1 leaders are more on the economical side, but you really have to be aware of the strength potential that can come from this particular synergy of Sun Tzu into Zizka. Anyways, moving on to Age A. We can see here that Sektat takes Colosseum. This one I think makes a lot of sense. There's more leaders than there are wonders available on the row. So the only guaranteed wonder for him to fall down would be possibly Hanging Gardens if nobody else wants to take it. But it's more guaranteed to pick up a leader in his Sektat's first turn. So this makes the most sense. For me, I'm going to take Cleopatra here. And the reason I do so over somebody like Hammurabi is because Sun Tzu is in the game. And I think it's a little bit scary if Sektat also has Colosseum plus Sun Tzu. I don't want to feel so much military pressure. That's just one synergy, that's just one combination, but Caesar is also in the game as well. And even if Sektat doesn't get Sun Tzu, he can always pressure Hammurabi with Caesar as well. The second reason that I'm going to take Cleopatra is because of the card that I pick here. I'm able to get rich land, and I think that having Cleopatra, rich land, and then I have a really strong feeling that Hanging Garden is going to be passed up by all my opponents. So it's just really nice to be able to build the first step of Hanging Gardens, along with using rich land to build a mine on the same turn. So as my second action, I'm going to take the rich land, like I said. Ordered here, it's going to take Hammurabi plus rich land. I think that this is just a risky pickup, like I said before. But it's possible that Tordread doesn't fear the early military pushes that Sun Tzu or Caesar can fish out. And then Fjantarik, I'm going to take Boudica plus Frugality. Boudica is a safe pickup, just because, even though there's two strength leaders showing, just because Tordread and I already have leaders. Anyways, Sektat's first turn. For 1 CA, Sun Tzu is available, and I think that he's going to have a pretty strong turn here. A pretty strong combination here. Sun Tzu with Colosseum into a leader like Barbarossa, seeding colonies or something like that. Could be really strong economical gameplay with Sun Tzu, or he could just feed into Zizka for strength as well. Not to mention there's also Columbus in the game, so Sun Tzu has a lot of value, even if you don't go a strength route. Then on my first turn here, I have the option between Hanging Gardens and maybe Pyramids. Pyramids being the overall stronger wonder generally, but I'm a little bit worried about military overall, and I think that Hanging Gardens works pretty well in a military setting. So I also had that synergy that I told you about before, so I'm actually going to pick Hanging Gardens here while doing the rest of my standard actions. I really think this is the right pickup overall, especially because Pyramids is on 2 civil actions. Even though I know a lot of good players would probably want to take Pyramids here, just because of its consistent power. Anyways, since I leave Pyramids on 1 CA for Tordread, first he selects Amurabi, takes Pyramids, and then does rest standard actions, and then takes Stockpile. I think the only stylistic difference that I would do is take Frugality over Stockpile here, but there's an extra civil action with Hammurabi and maybe Pyramids anyways, so getting the extra resource can be beneficial as well. Fjantarik has Boudica, has no Wonder yet, and it's going to do standard actions, and for his Wonder he's going to take Library, which all makes sense. Sektat seats, flips development trade routes, builds his lab, increases population, takes rich land. Doesn't really want to take any of these HA cards for 1 CA, and that makes a lot of sense here. Here, on my turn, I'm going to do the synergy that I talked about, build a mine and a step on the same turn. I had trade routes, so I didn't need the extra resource, but it helps anyways. And then I'm actually going to prepare a little bit for shenanigans here. I'm still really afraid of Sun Tzu synergy, so I'm going to go ahead and just take Barbarossa right away. Barbarossa also works really well with Hanging Gardens overall. Maybe not as well as Colosseum, but it's still a pretty good synergy piece. Tordread uses Stockpile, finishes Pyramids, so Stockpile did pay off because the trade routes came out for just only 1 additional resource. If Markets or Crafts came out, then Tordread could have just finished Pyramids without having that Stockpile, so it did pay off in the end. And then also Tordread does a little bit of shenanigans preparation by taking out Warfare. Fjantarik seats, flips development of science, takes drama, built a lab, takes rich land. So something I want to talk about here is that drama, it does have synergy in the game. There's Scouty in the game, there's Scouty in the game, there's Bach in the game, there's Marlena, and there's also Chaplain. So all of those have somewhat good theater synergy. The thing that I think is a little bit awkward here is that you're taking drama for 2 civil actions, so it's a little bit ambitious. I think if you're going to take rich land, irrigation is probably the better choice overall. So I just don't think that this really respects the fact. I think taking this early drama doesn't really respect the fact that there is going to be it doesn't respect Sun Tzu, basically. The second thing that I think is a huge problem here is that you're actually taking Fjantarik is actually taking 2 cards off the row. So with 3 cards falling down, Knights fall to 2 civil actions here. If you're not going to spend 3 CA here to take Knights, which I don't think anybody should take Knights for 3 CA here, you can't make it so easy for Sektat to take Knights here. So I think a good alternative turn would be, you can see that Fjantarik took Science here. You could actually take a resource, build 2 steps of Library, and then just take 1 card, or maybe increase population and take the rich land instead. So I think this is a little bit loose play, and we'll see the result of that very soon. Sektat seats, flips development planning, takes Knights, increase population, develops Knights, and reveals a very early medieval army. It's not the absolute earliest, but it is pretty early to go for 6 strength this early. And then when it comes to my turn, all I can say is that I'm really glad that the second copy of Knights fell right away afterwards, so I don't really feel that much of an issue. So there I see the scientific breakthrough. I feel like I'm going to have relatively low science, and I think having that extra science could really help me a lot to get out some techs that I need to do. So I was also fishing for development of settlement or development of civil life, so I can get out an extra population. Because I'm going to have some issues going for these Knights without having a free worker to deal with my happiness. I don't mind missing the development of religion that just happened, but it would have really helped if I had that extra population out. So take the Knights, go for them, push to Barbarossa, use 2 Knights with its ability, and I have to use 1 action to increase my population. So if I was able to fish correctly for settlement or civil life, I could have taken this irrigation, or maybe skipped out on a knight and built a step using Cleopatra's bonus. Anyways, Tordread responds by taking Swordsman. Doesn't go for them right quite yet. Increases population. Builds a lab with its urban growth. Goes for Warfare. and doesn't do anything about its actual population in the military. So Tordread has 4 draws, including these 2, and he has about a 45% chance to defend any possible aggression. Fjantarik responds with a strength by taking Monarchy here, going for it, getting more military actions to help defend, increasing population twice, building a warrior, and awkwardly goes into corruption here. So with this, Fjantarik has drawn 6 cards total after these 2 draws, and I believe it's about a 60% chance to defend if Sektat decides to go for it. So on Sektat's political action, he goes for the plunder against Tordread. Like I said, about 55% chance of success. This is a nice boost. Uses development of religion nicely, takes engineering genius, takes breakthrough, and builds a step of Coliseum. On my turns, I seed barbarians. I think I was fishing for resources, but I actually forget that both crafts and markets is already out of the deck. I was hoping that I could use those resources to finish Hanging Gardens or something, but hitting Civil Life here means I can't really use it efficiently. I do end up using Civil Life to increase my population, just because there's a chance of development of warfare in the deck as well. Anyways, for the rest of my turn, I'm going to take Code of Laws, Breakthrough, Swordsman, and one of the reasons that I take Swordsman is that I don't have any upgraded production, so I really like having an H1, both H1 military attacks, and it's also a pretty good way of keeping Fjantarik weak and not able to use his Boudica bonus very easily. Tordread uses Civilized to develop Swordsman, grabs Knights for 3 CA, which makes a lot of sense, and grabs Urban Growth and Theocracy. So you can see that people, and Bread and Circus as well. You can see that everybody pretty much always has to play pretty awkwardly around Sun Tzu, especially taking Knights for 3 CA. Fjantarik doesn't have Knights, doesn't have access to Knights, doesn't have access to Swordsman. He is just relegated to be weak for quite a while here. Anyways, Fjantarik, he uses Civil Life to increase population, reveals Fighting Band, builds a warrior with the extra resource. Can't really do anything with the Boudica bonus anyways. Finishes library, picks Isabella, and goes for her, just because Boudica is not really able to trigger very well for him anymore. And then takes Bread Circus. Sektat Seeds, puts development of politics, builds a knight, finishes another medieval army, goes takes iron, develops iron, does an upgrade, and also takes Code of Laws. So Sektat's turn. His turns are obviously not awkward at all. He's making other people more awkward and is able to get he's able to start his economy now more easily than others. So my turn. First off, I flip Foray. I ceded strategic territory there. I'm thinking that on Barbarossa I could more easily send my units away. It's not going to be revealed for a long time, so I'm hoping maybe I could send a medieval army and get H2 draws or something. But getting this Foray, it's really nice here. I actually take extra food here. I get enough resources to finish Hanging Gardens, and then I also take extra food so that I can activate Barbarossa a couple times. And then I take this Warfare and develop it. I'm gonna prioritize developing Warfare over Code of Law so I can hold extra cards. Yes, this is an economic cost, but I do want the cards that I keep in hand. So with me ceding strategic territory, you would think that I would prioritize these defense cards. Also because Sun Tzu is on the row, and maybe Sektat can go for Jishka with 3 Sun Tzu tactics at some point. Maybe a lot of people would probably disband a warrior into a knight if they get Sun Tzu here, and then that would push Sektat up to at least 16 strength. So knowing that I want to copy medieval armies as well, I could go up to 10, and then if I have extra defense cards, it might give me the chance of defending. I'm actually going to ignore that completely here, and I'm going to actually discard both of these defense cards. I think that if Sektat, even if he gets Jishka here, I have the ability to finish 3 medieval armies. I've been able to put all this population into my military because I have Hanging Gardens, and I can go up to 19 strength with 10 from units and then 9 from the tactics. I think that these strength-related events and this aggression will be really good for me in the future, And if I'm at 10 here with 3 military actions, at least if Sektat ends up at 16, there's pretty much no way he's going to go for me because my chance of defense is just so much higher than my opponent's, especially Fjantarik, who doesn't have access to any military technology. Tordread, revolutions into theocracy, really just trying to hold as much defense as he can, and then takes cultural heritage over something like iron just because he needs that extra science more. Fjantarik, on his turn, goes for bread and circus, builds a bread and circus, takes iron, takes reserves, takes alchemy. Yeah, I think if Fjantarik hadn't gone for Isabella already, it'd probably be pretty smart to take away Zizka as leader, just because of that military potential that Sektat has. But it's not an option, so which Sektat does first he seats, flips rats, takes Zizka, elects, finishes Colosseum with engineering genius, upgrades a mine, and then rebalances army to end up at 16 strength, like I said. On my turn, I cede uncertain borders, flip call to arms, go for code of laws, build another warrior so I can copy next turn, take monarchy, alchemy, and rich land here. So currently my plan for next turn is to revolution into this monarchy and then copy the upgraded medieval army. And I want to have as many military actions as possible so that I can freely do things like aggressions, or at least more easily do things like aggressions. Also, knowing that there is scientific breakthrough in the deck, I can go for these alchemies shortly afterwards. Whereas it would take me a lot longer to go for irons or something instead. So even though I take a rich land here, going for the alchemies is just an easier transition because iron has a much higher chance of rotting in my hand for longer. And if I don't go for iron pretty much immediately in age 2, then it's not really going to pay off, especially with the fact that there is Watt in the game as well. I could probably just wait for coal. Tordread offers open borders with Fjantarik. Makes a lot of sense. Gives them much better chance to be able to defend. Starts by grabbing Himeji, grabs Christopher Columbus, builds a step on Himeji, can finish it next turn, grabs iron as well, and reveals a fighting band. So, this is a 9 strength difference, so there is some possibility of defending, but it does take 4 defense cards. So it's pretty unlikely. On Fjantarik's turn, he's the first one who gets an H2 draw. Develops alchemy, upgrades, reveals Legion instead. And that's his turn, just because he was hit by Call to Arms earlier. So Fjantarik ends up 10 behind, and it's pretty unlikely for Fjantarik to have 2 H2 defense cards and H1 here. I guess alternatively, Fjantarik could have 3 H1 defense cards and an H2, but if Sektat has an aggression here, it's pretty guaranteed against both of these opponents. But before I do that, I guess I'll do the H1 overview. Even though Sektat is a little bit behind in civil actions compared to the rest of us, and is a little bit, and we're all a little bit behind in science compared to Fjantarik, the one nice thing about Sektat's civilization is that he has iron developed and upgraded quite a bit already. He also has a lot of strength that Tordread and Fjantarik can't really match, so it's going to be very awkward for them for a while, especially dealing with the event deck. So the nice thing about Sektat's strength, it's very cheap, and he's able to get some upgrades out of it. In my case, I have no upgraded production, but something that's nice that I do have is I have a lot of these government-style technologies out already, so I don't really need to get any more extra civil actions or military actions after this point. I'm also going to also have the plans of revolutioning with this monarchy next turn, and if I get something like Forbidden City or Kremlin, I could have enough civil actions for the rest of the game. Forger Civilization, it looks a lot like mine in terms of production. Nothing's upgraded. Has an H1 government, H1 blue tech. But what he doesn't have is he doesn't have the potential to get into a lot of strength very easily. Maybe he can help defend with the Himeji Castle, but having to sacrifice units might be very expensive as well, with no food upgrades or anything. And Fjantarik, he has good science here, and basically the only way he can get stronger is with riflemen, so there's just a very, very high reliance on getting an H2 military tech. Anyways, moving on to Sektat's political action. He goes for an enslave on Tordread. which hurts because Tordread did not have a free worker, takes irrigation, develops it, and then does some economy upgrades. So didn't really go for the Code of Laws here, so that he can spend down his resources. Also, it leaves possibilities of going for Scientific Method next turn instead. Because if we went for the Code of Laws first, it would take him 2 extra turns to build up the science. You'd have 3 at the end of his production, so 2 more turns on top of that to be able to go for a science upgrade. On my turn, I see Border Conflict. Reveal that Scientific Breakthrough. First off, that Border Conflict, I really know the next event deck is going to be in my favor in terms of strength. So, get a Scientific Breakthrough. Everybody gets pretty little except for Fjantarik, and I really need it, so I'm glad I seeded it into the deck. Finally adopt the Medieval Army, and then do the Revolution. I did consider taking Scientific Method and then possibly going for it next turn, but I think that this turn is pretty well set up for a Revolution. Don't have any corruption or any issues like that. Then I can just go for Alchemy next turn for some slight upgrades at least. And here's Tordread, Seeds, flips Inhabited Territory. Sektat wins this one. I probably should have bid this up to at least 6 to send at least a Medieval Army, so I'm glad that Fjantarik did it for me. I was just focused on the fact that I can get an aggression through, pretty likely, so I didn't bid on it at all. Anyways, Sektat does send a whole Medieval Army. Tordread finishes the Meji, plays Cultural Heritage, and takes Selective Breeding for 3 actions, which I think makes a lot of sense. One of the things that Tordread did is that he disbanded a farm for that Enslaved, and I think that's probably the wrong choice. I think you need to disband the religion here. We have urban growths to rebuild some of our urban buildings. You probably don't want this religion anyways, going for Brendan Circus in the future, but we really need some extra food just so we can get more population out. So disbanding this farm seems like the wrong choice to me. Fjantarik sees Nobel as the last card available, and this is a pretty big boost for him to be able to go into Nobel here. Getting extra strength and science pretty easily, and then able to still upgrade his mind production a little bit. So I think Nobel here, really big boost for Fjantarik here. And with as many draws as he had in H2, there's a much higher likelihood of defense. Sektat Seeds, those Barbarians. I think this was one of my very early seeds. I think this was always likely to try to affect Sektat just because he was in first position, seeding more often, but with his position, there's pretty much no way he would have been one of the 2 weakest. Anyways, he increased population, builds another knight, builds a warrior to rebuild that medieval army and take Scientific Method and urban growth. I'm not sure if this is quite correct. I believe you could just take Scientific Method here, develop it, go for 1 upgrade, and still have enough resources to build another knight here. But I guess it makes sense to delay it just a bit, just to get this urban growth as well to make those upgrades a little bit cheaper. Anyways, I have an aggression that I plan on using, and I aimed it at Fjantarik here. It's pretty unlikely still for him to have either 2 H1s and 2 H2s or 3 H2 defense cards. So Fjantarik also had a whole alchemy to destroy. So it's really nice to get those resources to delay Fjantarik a little bit, and helps me go for alchemies here. And then for my remaining actions, I take reserves in Richland. I just need resources. I don't have any upgraded production, so hoping to get coal relatively soon. On Tordread's turn, he uses Columbus, and this is only a wealthy territory. And I think it's not the greatest territory to use, but he does this just to be able to get some upgrades in. So he develops the iron, does an upgrade, does a second upgrade, then takes cannons. But one of the things is, I think that with this destroyed farm, I think you need to go for selective breeding first. It's certainly not as civil action efficient because you can only put in 1 upgrade for the selective breeding this turn, but this population is so crucial that it's going to leave a lot of problems in the future if you don't get more population out. Fjantarik Seeds, plus border conflicts. So pretty nice for me to get these boosts. Fixed navigation, develops it. Mostly, I guess you could either go in for colonies, or I'm possibly thinking just the extra strength. Grab selective breeding for 2 CA, builds a warrior, and maybe is in a position to actually be able to defend now with only an 8 strength gap between me and him. Sektat tries an aggression on Tordread, develops scientific method, upgrades twice, and then takes constitutional monarchy. So Sektat just really focusing on his upgrades, his production upgrades. Even though it's only 4 CA, he's being really efficient about it. And I think his civilization is very focused and very strong. Here, because Tordread did have to defend against an aggression, I have 2 more in hand. I'm gonna try for something. I'm gonna try for the spy here, just because it would help me quite a bit, of course. Sektat did possibly clear some cards for me, and even though there's a sack involved, that maybe there's a sacrifice defense, it would still be really painful for Tordread to have to defend that way. Otherwise, the only possible defense is 3 defense cards here. So try for the spy on Tordread, goes through. Sacking would be a huge loss. Maybe he let it through anyways, but this 5 science is a big gain for me. If it didn't go through, I would really highly consider going for Gaudi and Team Sports here, just because then it would cost 4 science. But I have some thoughts with like maybe upgrading my position with Watt still in the future, and I just go for Team Sports without Gaudi now that I have the extra science. I also am a little worried that this card could be something like Ravages of Time, which would really hurt my position because I'm relying so heavily on Hanging Gardens. So Team Sports is just a really nice card to pick up here. In addition to Team Sports, I think that Kremlin is a really nice card for me to get. Bringing me to like 7 CA and 5 military actions would just be able to be really good for the rest of the game. So here I take and develop Team Sports, grab Kremlin, and with my last civil action, I take Frugality. So even though I talked about passing on Gaudi here, I actually think that it's correct to take Gaudi over Frugality here, just because Barbarossa is really not doing anything for me at all. So even though I'm thinking about the economical benefit of Watt, I should probably be thinking about how little Barbarossa is providing me here. Like, I really shouldn't overlook the fact that Gaudi does also save me science, so it would be a little bit easier for me to develop this possible swordsman and maybe breeding on the next turn, just because I'm going to end this turn with 8 science instead of something like 9. So on Tordread's turn, his turn gets really awkward now that I hit the spy off, and he has quite a full hand full of technologies and a yellow card that's really hard to use. So first, on his turn, he upgrades mine, develops Bread and Circus, since it's the only way to get a card out of a hand, takes Gaudi, and elects him, and doesn't even use his last level action here. Yeah, so first off, really awkward that you have to take Gaudi, but first you have to develop Bread and Circus, just because there's no hand space. And then this is where you could see somebody like, if we were gone for selective breeding here instead of Iron, going for Maria might have been a lot stronger here. All we would need to do is develop the food that we already have, and then that would really supplement the lack of resources. This would still be on bronze, and the science that we're lacking here. So I feel like Tordread didn't really prepare for some really bad case scenarios, and didn't really prepare for extra population, or value the extra population, and it's really coming back to bite him up. Fjantarik Seeds, flips Knowledge of the Ancients. So one of the unlucky things about Tordread's position is that he was weak and didn't want to seed, but if he had gone that 3 extra science, he didn't need to do that awkward thing about developing the arena first, and could have taken out selective breeding, then gone for Gaudi, and then developed this later. So things really not lining up for Tordread overall. Anyways, Fjantarik upgrades on mine, takes Cavalryman, develops selective breeding. On Sektat's turn, he seats, flips on certain borders. So, and really, this deck is really paying off for me. Develops Constitutional Monarchy, increased population, builds a farm outright, and upgrades again. So, getting that really nice 6/6/6 production. Takes Organized Religion for future happiness issues, and then takes Overgrowth. So, just very clean civilization here, and also having the extra 2 yellow tokens is also very nice. My turn. I try again with the aggression. Didn't talk about it, that I drew the raid as well. But the extra military action is really paying off for me here. On Tordread's civilization, he doesn't have much to destroy, so I choose 2 alchemies. And I really wish that I could go here and develop something like coal or selective breeding, but I do at least have a wonder to build, and I'm going to do it with the architecture here. Just because I want to be finishing Kremlin this turn anyways, and even though it's like on 3 CA, I don't think my opponents are really that incentivized to get him. Maybe Sektat though. So I figure I might as well take the architecture here, make my urban buildings cheaper, And I don't think that taking these technologies is really that useful for me anyways. I'm also still able to get the efficient upgrade, and I'm not really caring too much for like journalism here, so I just spend action using one of my reserves. Tordread, he had the opportunity to take journalism last turn, but he's able to do it now again for 1 CA. Uh, sees that he really needs science, so he ends up developing it anyways. So builds the journalism outright, brings his science production up back to 2, but one of the things it does is that he has a lot of culture production with Gaudi here. So maybe with Meji, a little extra culture production, there are some chances for him to be if he can hide behind this kind of setup. But only having 2 science here for this next coming turn and just going to take a very long time to build up, it's just a really rough spot. Fjantarik Seeds, flip strategic territory. Do bid sticks, don't have any defense cards, even though I've been drawing 3 pretty much every turn. Fjantarik wins this with the navigation that he built out. So only needs to send a warrior, which is pretty nice. Upgrades a farm, plays one of his reserves, upgrades the farm again, takes strategy. So just focusing on his economy here, taking cards that matter. Sektat Seeds, flips develop territory, Fjantarik wins this again. I don't really care for this one too much. I don't have any upgrades on my food production, so I didn't care to bid 6 this time around. Fjantarik wins this again just for a warrior. Sektat develops organized religion, increased population, takes breakthrough, and opera here. So one of the neat things about Sektat Civilization is that he was hyper focused on just production buildings, didn't spend any time on wonders or anything. So having such a strong production base will lead you to a very good civilization for H3, and it's also a really nice advantage to be able to take wonders for cheaper in H3 as well. Here I see it offered international trade agreement with Fjantarik. I think I made this offer on tournament position, knowing that Fjantarik is going to be relegated anyways. I also considered Tordread still a threat in this game, just because if he wins this game, he will be the one who's promoted out of Master. So I just didn't want to offer anything to Tordread that might help him stabilize. Anyways, for my turn, I finally have coal and selective breeding available, and a bunch of rich lands and efficient upgrades to use. So I start with the coal, use efficient upgrade and rich land. I should still have another turn to use this other rich land one, and then I'm just actually going to take the selective breeding right away since it's the 3rd copy. I don't really want to take efficient upgrade and patriotism here just because there would be so few cards left over that it becomes possible for selective breeding to actually fall off. So one of the nice things about this draw is I finally draw a good tactic. I want to develop these swordsmen out, and even though I only have 5 science next turn, I'm definitely going to prioritize these swordsmen over the selective breeding next turn. Orchard Seeds, plus prosperity. So can actually increase population this turn. First he builds another library. Takes breakthrough. Doesn't have much to do with his remaining civil actions, so he just increases population to build a farm. Last 2 actions didn't really do much, but you couldn't really do anything with those actions anyways. Fjantarik Seeds, flips rebellion, no one is affected. Takes justice system, so it gets a little bit more civil actions that way. Takes rifleman, develops rifleman, takes patriotism as well. Starts upgrading those warriors and isn't drawing 2 anymore. So we start to look at Fjantarik. Maybe he has a tactic already based off of cavalry and infantry. Sektat's turn, he seeds, flips international agreement. This is probably one of Sektat's seeds, so this is really nice for me to pick up here. Develops Code of Laws, takes cannons for 3 CA, builds a 3rd lab, and takes efficient upgrade. So if you remember what the leaders look like in H3, there's Einstein, Jobs, Meyer, and Gates. These scientific methods are very important, and I really like how Sektat went for it besides going for something like Eiffel Tower here. I do think one of his actions could have been to take architecture though, just because there are quite a few wonders that benefit from the extra steps you get to build, like Red Cross. It also boosts the civilization a little bit more with Ocean Liner or Harvard in the next coming turns. But overall, I really like how this civilization is built up. Something else to note is that I think that this is a really good setup for Bach as well. So you can collect a little bit extra science with scientific methods, and then go into operas, then side grade them all when you no longer need the science. So if his plan is to go for high science, this is great. If his plan is to go for high culture, this is also great. Anyways, for my turn, I debate a little bit on the cards that I should take. I'll try to pause. Debate a little on the cards I should take, but I only have the hand space for 3 cards anyway. So I end up taking the Urban Growth, Wave of Nationalism, and Opera here, just as like a bunch of resources to take. I'd rather upgrade my reduction over something like taking Eiffel Tower as well. There isn't Watt that showed up at all, so it's not until after I took the cards that Watt drops down. So then I have to debate on which leader I actually go for here. One of the things that I was thinking about is that Sektat is really set up very well for Bach, and also wouldn't mind something like Napoleon here. While I am probably best suited for Watt, I'm not really sure that he pays off as much anymore. And you can see that because I used his first channel already, I didn't take Watt here. I just felt like I couldn't really get too much benefit out of him. Maybe he would save me 6 resources by taking the selective breeding, 2 upgrades for selective breeding, and then also this 1 from the mine. But that didn't seem like a huge boost to me. So things that I decided on were if I wanted Napoleon or Bach instead, just because I have a lot of strength still compared to somebody like Tordread who has no population. I could maybe draw some aggressions and bully him around, get some stuff like that. And obviously Napoleon would make that a lot easier. But I also kind of decided that I can take Bach here, and one of the reasons that I do is because if I just take 1 card from here, Napoleon also falls off, so Sektat's only possible leader is Watt. This can be dangerous because Watt is really good with an early oil or something like that, but sometimes he's also a big dud if the oil doesn't happen until the second half of the H3 deck. Anyways, I can see this turn overall being incorrect because I don't end up taking Watt. Watt is great as a transitional leader anyways, so I only need Watt for 1 turn, and then maybe I can get a good H3 leader. But I felt like Bach would just provide me general benefits, and I can go for somebody like Marlena later in H3. Anyways, I developed the swordsman out of my hand. I do need to do so. Increase population, grab Bach, elect him, and I'm actually going to use the same benefit that I talked about these scientific methods being side graded. I can think about building these alchemies and then side grade these, side them into operas later if I don't need as much science. I also like this line a little bit because I'm leaving myself open to take and finish Ocean Liner on this next turn with 10 resources here. And even though it's very late, my selective breedings would also be very late as well. So I'm not going to get a lot of population from my selective breedings very easily. Maybe Ocean Liner can help supplement that. Granted, it's very easy for Sektat to take it as well, but without architecture, it is a little bit harder to finish if he also wants to take other things that might fall out for H3 cards. Anyways, for Tordread's next turn, he does kind of this cute offer here. So what he does is Tordread has a lot of problems. You can see that as the age ends, he's going to have this issue with happiness. He has no population available and really just needs to do so much in order to stabilize here. So what he does is that for his political action, he offers me the promise of military protection, so that this extra 4 strength is probably enough in order to survive a round of aggressions. So I really kind of like this play. He goes for selective breeding, upgrades twice, and then just expands a swordsman here, and then just takes reserves. Tordread's bot overall extremely rough, but I really like how he is just taking the risk here. His position is so bad that he knows he needs to do so. And if he can survive this turn cycle, maybe he can start to actually stabilize and spend his population into cannons or something like that. But there is finally an opportunity, and we're going to see what happens with Fjantarik's political action here. Is that he goes for a war of a territory over Tordread. So he has a strategy. We talked about the signs of maybe having a tactic with these cavalry. And then, so he goes for strategy, develops cavalrymen, increase population twice, and then builds 2 cavalrymen with patriotism and reveals a classic army. So Fjantarik kind of waiting in the background for quite a while here, and is finally striking on Tordread here. Anyways, although this is the end of H2, it seems like it'd be a little bit better to take an overview after the next turn. Sektat seeds, flips popularization of science, gets a little bit more than the rest of us. Increased population, builds cannons, builds 2 cannons, and switches to mobile artillery. This takes Watt in hand, grabs riflemen, and satellites. Here, I do have another aggression in hand. I have a plunder available, and Tordread is still very weak, so with a 15 or so difference, I go for a plunder. I'm going to take all the resources and develop my economy with it. So here, I could go for something like selective breeding, increasing food population, increasing my food production that way. But you can see that I decided to take ocean liner service, even though it's really late. I think I want a lot of population as fast as possible, and even though I can only get maybe 5, possibly 6 activations out of this, ocean liner service can still be worth it, especially because I can finish it this term. If I could go for something like breeding and opera, maybe that's a possibility. But with only 7 signs and only the ability to do one at a time, I'm just going to deal with one of my bottlenecks this way. So I take ocean liner service, finish it, increase population, take cannons, go for a cannon, and I do leave myself not defensible from Fjantarik. I did forget that I actually want to go for a cannon here just to look like I had a 1-card defense. I do want to mention that one of the big problems with this line, though, is although I get a lot of population out, there is almost every single H3 wonder available on the row right now. And going for something economical like ocean liner service means I'm going to miss out on a big port wonder like Hollywood. Anyways, moving to Tordread's turn, 6 strength, just got plundered. It's pretty obvious what he's going to do here. Tordread resigns, and completely fair. It does mean that Fjantarik doesn't get any real benefit from the War over Territory. But if you're at 4 total resources, 6 strength, facing 30, no real way to recover, it seems appropriate here. Tordread had a really tough game, and I totally support this decision to resign. It does mean that he can no longer get promoted from this group, so all I have to do is win this game in order to get that promotion. So unfortunately for Fjantarik, he set up this big war that didn't really get paid off just because Tordread was pushed to resign. It would have been really difficult to war either Sektat or I just because of our amount of resources we had, possible strength, potential, and just general unknown what tactic we're for. Anyways, Sektat tanked a lot, Fjantarik tanked a lot on this turn, and I think it's one that makes a lot of sense. He has a relatively big gap in between our civilizations just because Fjantarik is on fewer civil actions, a little bit less science, a little bit fewer resources, especially compared to me. So what Fjantarik decides to do on this turn is that he sets up some relatively big point stuff or potential with taking internet, professional sports, and PR. So Fjantarik already has the arena set up. Pro sports will be really, really good with the internet, and internet can just be extremely large with pro sports in general. Also, a couple of the other wonders are going to fall off here, with International Red Cross going to fall off on Sektat's turn. And there's only one remaining good wonder, which is Faster Chains. So overall, you can see Fjantarik's position is pretty solid overall. He's going to have a lot of points in the end, even if his culture production is low right now. If we look at Sektat and my civilizations, we can see that Sektat is just incredibly flexible here. Maybe he can go for chaplain or with operas, get culture production going, but he plenty of flexibility. For me, I have no real bottlenecks. My food is mostly taken care of. I can go into operas relatively soon as well. And I have actually a little bit more civil actions than it looks like, since I have a free population increase every turn. One last thing to note is that Tordread did resign in H3, so there are actually 3 copies of Air Force in the game. It's going to make wars a little bit harder in general, just because it's harder to find somebody who's weaker in this game. All 3 of us have pretty good tactics, and even though that Classic Army is probably the worst of them, he is on H2 units, so there's always the possibility of going to Modern Armies or other H3 tactics, plus the fact that Pro Sports can supplement a lot of strength as well. So although the tactic that I'm potentially going for and the tactic that Sektat is on is more efficient, all 3 players have plenty of strength, and there's just going to be very little ways to find holes with weaknesses and without having one person who lacks Air Force. Anyways, moving on. And look at Sektat's turn here. So Sektat one of his weaknesses in his production, I guess, is that he needs some lane to put his production in. And because I didn't take watt earlier, and this oil came down, and it's relatively early, it's actually only the second turn in age 3. This really makes me regret pressing watt, because what Sektat does is that he's able to get some pretty big upgrades in here. So Sektat goes for watt, oil, use efficient upgrade, and then really has just a ton of production here. Having this much resource production also makes you pretty much unwarrable as well, just because you always have a big bank to work with. So even though Sektat's culture production, not really, it's lagging behind a little bit compared to me, I don't really have much going on, and he has a little bit of a lead, a little bit of a cushion to work with. Anyways, on my turn, I seed Impact of Harmony. Should be relatively good with the Ocean Liner that I have. I do try to bid this up a little bit. I don't really care about it too much. Just trying to make Fjantarik pay a little bit more. He has navigation anyway, so it's going to come off relatively cheap. He only has to spend 1 unit and a card for it. Here I start going for my operas. Increase population again. Upgrade some warriors using those extra military actions I have. And I take 2 revolutionary ideas. There is some thought to taking away this multimedia. It is a good way for both Fjantarik and Sektat to start working on their culture and science production. Especially Fjantarik, multimedias work extremely well with internet. The only thing is that I think that Fjantarik is actually pretty far behind me, so I don't really mind if he goes for it. I think that, yes, he has a bunch of big things going for him, but there are some negatives in his civilization as well, which is that it just takes a lot of simple actions to go for all these things. So even though he can really get a big culture boost, I'm not too worried about it, and I think he's just playing from behind. So take these revolution ideas, maybe go for a different government. And I'm currently thinking about putting my resources into upgrading my food production, going for operas. So I don't quite need multimedia yet. Fjantarik offers international tourism with Sektat. It's only for 1 for each of them. So, usually this is a pretty overpowered pact, but it's more of a glorified peace treaty here. Anyways, Fjantarik takes multimedia, develops it, and spends a good chunk of his resources going for it. It is a big boost to its economy. It is really good. I just think that Fjantarik is playing a little bit from behind, so it's not a big deal. And these multimedias are really expensive because of no engineering time. Then increase population with Regality and increase population again. Sektat seeds, flips orange industry. Fjantarik gets a little bit more than the rest of us. Sektat takes democracy, has a bunch of science to go for it. I was hoping that democracy would come to me, maybe hoping that Sektat would go for like opera or something, spend his science down that way. But the democracy is a big boost as well, so I can't really fault him for going for that. Yeah, I was just really hopeful that it would come to me instead. So anyways, goes for democracy, grabs military theory and mechanized agriculture, increases population, builds a temple, and develops mechanized agriculture, and goes for that as well. So extremely cheap upgrades. And when I say cheap, I mean non-existent because of the watt bonus. So even though that Sektat's position like a turn or 2 ago had pretty mediocre everything, now it's just like his economy is just really booming, and it's really scary to look at. It was around this time that I really regretted to see how much watt could actually do for somebody, and I really wish I just took him instead. So here and then Sektat disbands a warrior and builds a cannon. I think that because he went for democracy this turn, he could have done this before switching governments, so he'd had an extra draw. So just a little minor misplay there. On my turn, I seed Impact Competition. It's a little bit better for me than the others, and I bid pretty heavily on this historic territory. I was thinking I have to bid pretty high because Sektat is pretty incentivized to bid at least a mobile artillery, and I wasn't necessarily sure how high Fjantarik would bid, but you can see he's the one that I actually ended up beating with. So I wanted to bid pretty high for that, because if I let Sektat win this, it's a 22 points win overall. In my previous game, we saw that I lost because of historic territory, and I really didn't want to make it so cheap. So again, But winning this does mean that I have to delay my production quite a bit. So it is 11 points, so it's a lot already. So this is way more than having an extra opera built or so an extra opera built this turn or so. Plus the extra happy faces can mean that I can put my workers into something like other culture buildings more easily or production buildings more easily if I want to. So I win this, but I spend quite a bit. You can see here that I spent uh, basically a medieval army and a half with a card. And I don't have a lot of population left over, and I really have to rebuild it. So I spend my wave, build a I do play both revolutionary ideas. I build a cannon, upgrade a warrior, build another warrior, and then also reveal Napoleonic army. But I'm not really happy with this situation, not drawing very many cards. So I spent those revolutionary ideas on communism here. So this way I still get three full draws. Moving up myself up to 9 plus kind of 1 extra action is also a really big economy boost anyways. But there is something that I'm worried about. And I did talk about this before, but I'm worried about this gigantic production here. In my hand, I only have Impact of Science and Impact of Balance, which, I mean, it's very easy for a Sektat to balance at 10 here. And he actually has 3 forms, so if he just goes for straight upgrades, there's even a possibility of balancing at 15. So with my remaining actions, I debated quite a while on this. I could, maybe side grade these alchemies into operas to get more culture production going this right away. But the decision I make is based on being able to try to seed in the future. If I seed something like Impact of Science and I'm able to win it, that's like a 10-point seed. If I get other good impacts, like Impact of Culture or Impact of Strength, if I win those could be 17 point, up to 17 point swings, maybe 10. And this also comes in the fact that like Sektat is in a slightly better position than me because Fjantarik has internet, so Sektat is the one who's favored to get the only remaining wonder fast food chains. So I am overall pretty afraid of Sektat having just a huge production, going for everything, winning all the impacts, and also somehow getting the fast food chains as well, and just easily able to build everything. So with my remaining actions, I choose to take gates here for only a 3 resource production, losing out on 3 culture production, and taking revolutionary idea. I think this small boost in resource production going from 10 to 13, it could help me just like fight Sektat's eventual 15 resource production and will allow me to actually fight for the impacts overall. I don't really know if this is correct, but I make this decision because I pretty much think that I have to win this game through peaceful means, and peaceful means that I have to win impacts pretty hard. One of the other possibilities I have is instead of taking gates, I could maybe take computers because Einstein and gates were both available. If I take computers, it sets me up in a good position no matter what next turn. And instead of revolutionary idea with computers, I would just take reserves with computers instead. Anyways, I would really love to know what people think about this turn overall, if this type of strategy actually plays for the win or not. Going for Fjantarik's turn. Fjantarik does something that actually really helps me a lot in my possible overall game plan. So what Fjantarik does is that you can see that he takes engineering here. So engineering is a key piece for both of them, just because it allows the buildings to be so much cheaper. But for Sektat especially, it allows, if you were to get fast food chains, to be able to build that quickly. Right now, if Sektat gets the fast food chains, he has to take it for, in this section most likely, so for at least for 4 civil actions, and then it'll take him another 4 civil actions to finish it. So it's like skipping a whole turn if he gets fast food chains. So this Fjantarik being able to get engineering is actually a really key piece, and I actually probably would try to deny this in general if I had the opportunity to do so. Again, I don't really care too much about what Fjantarik's doing. So he rebuilds his army, increased population, takes rockets, takes reserves, and just stops there. Even though that Sektat and I are basically invincible with our production, Fjantarik still has to worry about taking cards like this. And the thing is, I'm probably going to pass a lot of them to him because I have so much production already that I don't really feel the need to take them. So Sektat's turn. He seeds here, builds refugees, disbands a farm, but still upgrades, has plenty of food production. I'm very thankful that Red Cross is no longer in the game, for Sektat, of course. But Watt has done its work, and after doing all these upgrades of mine, goes for Einstein. I'm really hoping that Maybe Sektat decides 11 science production is enough with Einstein. Maybe start going for operas and culture production. Maybe going for multimedia instead. But what he does is that he just grabs these computers and upgrades them 3 times, which is just extremely powerful as well. It is obviously powerful, but one of my saving graces is that Einstein is a action-intensive leader. So even though he has a ton of science production, making at least 6 more culture or something per term, maybe Nobel prizes, it is at least hard to do sometimes, especially trying to deny fast food chains as well. Anyways, coming to my turn, I don't really have a good seed, but I'm Gates. I have a lot of resource production. I seed impact of balance here. I do so because I think I can pretty easily get my balance up to 9, so it's not the worst. It's still like gaining a point. But unfortunately, Ravage of Times flips, and it kind of messes up with my turn. So initially, I was thinking about playing the revolutionary idea, going for multimedias, getting my culture and science production up that way, also with enough science to go for selective breeding, so I can upgrade those as well. But since I'm lacking happy faces now, I'm not able to go for multimedias very easily. But I still, I can still build things. I build a feeder here, upgrade my breeding twice. It might not seem like I need food, but maybe I can get an extra population increase or 2 out of food as well. I do need, population just to go into things. I'm gonna have a ton of resources, but I do need the population to actually be useful and productive. Play the revolutionary idea, take multimedia, take reserves, take Air Force, and I only take Air Force as safety here for the most part, but it's overall pretty unnecessary. It just seems really hard to pass up for 1CA, just to be completely safe for sure. Anyways, on Fjantarik's turn, he finally switches to Pierre, develops engineering, does the Nobel Prize with Pro Sports, and builds a multimedia, increased population, and gets urban growth. So with this switch, you can really start to see how big Fjantarik's economy is getting in terms of culture production, science production, and with these buildings being so much cheaper, it doesn't really matter too much that Fjantarik is not getting as much resource production as Sektat Mine. So Fjantarik didn't really take that many cards. I'm really hoping that I can get fast food chains here. There's only 3 cards new that are being revealed. So if fast food chains comes my way, I think that this could very likely be a close game. I can still, build multimedias and stuff. I can still finish fast food chains really easily. And Sektat is pretty limited because he really only has operas to go for in terms of culture production. But what happens is that fast food chains is the last card that is revealed to this row, and Sektat just takes it, which is bad. But I talked about Einstein's civil action intensiveness, so that is a saving grace. Is that I don't actually think that Sektat's total point count really has changed. It's just that mine has probably gone down by about 10 or 15 points or so. So yeah, it's a big loss, but just have to play on through it. So with the remainder of actions, Sektat develops opera, develops military theory, takes Air Force, builds a step of fast food chains with his last turn. This way, Sektat still has 2 techs to develop next turn. He's going to need to take 5 actions to be able to play these 2 technologies and finish fast food chains. So the rest of his remaining 3 civil actions are pretty limited here. On my turn, I seed my only real option, Impact Culture. This one will actually be extremely strong for me. Right now, I plan on trying to win it, and hopefully Fjantarik would come in second. It's really hard for Sektat with all those actions tied up in fast food chains to really compete on this. So Impact Culture, really lucky draw last turn. Civil Unrest flips. Fjantarik is the only one affected. Increase population, build a farm here. So what's happening here is that I'm preparing for the impact of harmony in the deck. It also prepares for the impact of balances in the deck as well. I use reserves for food, increase population, build another theater. Take computers, take efficient upgrade, take another efficient upgrade. I think here I forgot about the happy face issue that I'm going to have next turn. So it's very likely instead of one of the efficient upgrades, I should just go for these pro sports here. I lose out on some resources, but what I was thinking about, I was preparing for is I'm going to go for this impact of science next turn, which seems a little bit crazy because Sektat is at plus 18 science, but it's my only impact that I can play for. And if I seed it and I'm 1 stage ahead, at least that's a 10-point swing, and all the computers will still give me bonuses at the end. Anyways, going to Fjantarik's turn. So one other thing that this draw is actually really good here. This impact of population means that I don't have to be committed to impact of science. So going on to Fjantarik's turn, he takes tanks, builds a arena, increase population, takes engineering genius, increase population again, and then builds some multimedia. So you can really see with 3 multimedias, couple pro sports, this is like a 30-point wonder. This internet can be really large. So Sektat, his last turn, seeds, flips impact of competition, which is slightly better for me, but slightly better for Fjantarik, especially because he's PR. Develops satellites, develops Air Force, increase population again, builds an opera, builds an Air Force, and with his 3 remaining actions, he gets to finish off fast food chains for 23 points here and gets Nobel Prize. So, like I said, I had the option to go for science, but population is basically the same, actually, and it doesn't force me into the impact of science line. So, I go for that. I see it here. Flip impact of harmony, slightly better for me than the others. Go to 24 here. Increase population, increase again with food. Build an opera, play multimedia, build a library, disband a swordsman, build a temple because I'm still unhappy, and adopt mobile artillery instead to keep up enough strength. Go for computers, and then upgrade 3 times. So what I am supposed to do here, instead of these 2 actions, I think I'm not supposed to build a temple, I'm not supposed to upgrade one of these labs. I think what I'm supposed to do is I'm supposed to disband this other swordsman, and then build an agriculture here. I somewhat forgot that impact of balance is a doubling effect, so if I don't try to play something around impact of happiness, which is, if I have one unhappy worker, I just don't need to increase my population, so I could just have the food and the population sitting out here. So if I just don't have that unhappy worker, I'll still be as happy as Sektat is for the most part, and a little bit happier than Fjantarik. So I did forget about the doubling effect of impact balance. I could go to a balance of 12 here instead. So plus 6 points on balance, and maybe there's a possibility of agriculture from Sektat, especially because he did fully upgrade his farms when it isn't really necessary. He has a little bit of food lying around, and it just might not have been that important to do so. But it was Watt, so it was free, so it is something to play around. So if I did that disband instead, this would still be an alchemy, so it would be minus 2 points for the Bill Gates bonus, but it would be plus 6 points for balance. So that's a pretty big difference, and if it's with agriculture, that's plus 9 total, so about 8 culture difference overall because I'm also losing a temple. But I actually did do the math this time around. I've had, trouble where I didn't really calculate all of the potential impact points. And pretty much every neutral impact, sans industry and agriculture, are better for me. So there's 3 impacts that are worse for me, which is progress, which I have in hand. Actually, sorry, I guess there's 4, because progress I have in hand, science I have in hand. Technology would be terrible for me, and strength would be terrible for me. But those are the only 2 impacts that will actually get me to lose this game. Everything else is neutral or better for me. So I didn't really think too much about it past that point because those 2 are such big differences that if they're in there, I kind of lose anyways. And if it's something else, I kind of win anyways. Even though I didn't get a wonder, my production's really big. I'm guaranteed to win Impact of Culture because Fjantarik can really only get up to 19 with building an arena and then building the rest of the internet. So that's why another reason I didn't really need this religion is that I didn't need to edge him out from going from 19 to 20. So overall, I think I still have a pretty fair shot at this game. It really depends on the seeds, though. 3 of these seeds are mine, 3 of these seeds are Sektat's, so it really just depends on the draws at this point. Anyways, Fjantarik. Present aggression on me, I just decided to discard all my cards for fun. His turn is pretty forced anyways, so he plays his reserves, build a couple stages of internet, use engineering genius, finishes internet, and actually goes for rockets and tanks here. What this does is that it plays around impact technology a little bit more, because he also had the ability to build an arena here for the +5 overall. You could build this being 2 culture production for Pierre, and then +3 for internet. Anyways, going before the evaluation and after Fjantarik makes production, you can see that this is actually a pretty close game. Although I am lagging a little bit behind, you know that I have 3 computers out, so just on board itself, it's like 171 to 163 or 163. Obviously, I have some good impacts in there for me, but Sektat could have some really good ones as well. And after the first impact, you can already see that I've caught up quite a bit to my opponents, basically tied at this point. Impact population, you saw that was actually pretty good for me. It's +6 overall compared to the others. Impact balance, a little better for Sektat, as it balanced at 10. So again, still basically tied. Fjantarik starts to fall a little bit behind. Impact agriculture, Sektat seed, a little bit better for him. Impact industry, Sektat seed, really good, of course. And you can see that Fjantarik, he just had a really strong civilization, but it's really starting to fall in the impact stage. And then impacts technology. So I'm going to lose out pretty heavily here. Even after Bill Gates' bonus only brings me up to 253. So, or 251. So 13 points behind Sektat. That impact technology was +16 for him. But like I said, I would have lost impact strength anyways. So with all games completed, we can finally look at the standings for my group. And we can see here that Lambda is going to promote. I didn't win the last game, so it was the only way I could have. And what I'd like to do is make a overall group evaluation this time around, a season evaluation as opposed to singular game. I think, just like last game, I played pretty strategically well overall, but I think tactically making those small decisions where I bled a lot of inefficiencies. Because I finished, only 1 point behind here, there were actually many games where I finished within about 10 points or so. The last game was a little bit bigger, it was 13, but I think if I had made that decision on impact agriculture, building a farm instead, it would have only been a 5-point difference instead. There were other games like early on in my second game, my first 4-player game, I took second, where I only lost by a handful of points. And then my previous game against Lambda as well was an example where I only lost by 3 points. So very, very small margins there. But even though that I was so close, I actually think that this result is completely fair. There were a lot of places that I played relatively sloppy in terms of my actual turn, even if my strategy was relatively solid. I didn't stick with my game plan well enough a lot of the games. So I think this is an appropriate place to be. I think that when I was playing before, or at least I'd like to hope that when I was playing before, my turns were a lot more solid, a lot more thought out, and a lot less risky in general. So this season has definitely been a pretty good learning experience for me, and in terms of playing at a high level again. At the same time, I really liked how I played overall. I think I played a variety of strategies. There were some where I played a lot of low eco games, high culture. There were some that I played high strength, and there were some that I just played a balanced civilization as well. So I wasn't married to a single strategy. I didn't have a particular style. I think I read the game situations pretty well throughout all my games, and I adapted pretty well. So even though I'm not going to get promoted, I'm overall very happy with my results. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next season.